big news in the case of Idaho versus Bryan Kohberger just yesterday when Judge Hippler's order on the defense's motion for a Franks hearing was dropped on the Idaho court case's website, along with some other documents. And the long and the short of it is all evidence is going to be making it into the trial. All evidence that Ann Taylor had been working so hard to suppress, the digital evidence, DNA evidence regarding Bryan Kohberger's searches on Amazon, on Google, on Facebook, on YouTube, his AT&T records, everything that she was trying to have suppressed through a potential Franks hearing. All of that evidence the judge ordered is going to be allowed into the trial. We will be hearing about all of it. A lot of people expected that. I personally did not think that the judge was going to grant a Franks hearing. I didn't think that there was any chance that all of that evidence was going to be suppressed. But what I was not expecting was the nature and the detail of Judge Hippler's order. And in Judge Hippler's order, through his order, we learned even more about the evidence in this case than we learned through the hearing itself. Remember, when the hearing took place on January 23rd and 24th, afterwards, we were like, oh my gosh, all that we learned about as far as evidentiary information that we didn't know about due to the broad and strict gag order, we learned about in that hearing motioning for a Franks hearing. And where we learned the most information that people are definitely going to be talking about was in Section B, having to do with the eyewitness reports. And specifically, this had everything to do with Dylan Mortenson's statements to law enforcement about what she heard and saw and experienced in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. So there are some really big eye openers in here. Some have to do with what Dylan saw and experienced, and others have to do with what was going on in the house otherwise. So I'm just going to give you a highlight of the biggest kind of booms that we learned from Judge Hippler's order. So let me just read you this. When Exhibit A's were submitted in support of each search warrant applications, Dylan Mortenson had sat for at least 3 interviews with law enforcement, 2 on November 13th, 2022, 1 with Officer Nuns, and later with Detective Mowry on November 17th, 2022, with Detective Gooch. Her description of the intruder was notably similar during all 3 interviews. 1, white, male. 2, slim, skinny, lean body type. 3, slightly taller than Dylan Mortenson, 5'10". 4, wearing all black. 5, wearing a mask that was covering his forehead and mouth. 6, a voice that she did not recognize saying he was here to help. And 7, the intruder walked out towards the back sliding door without saying anything to her. While she did not tell Officer Nunes that she noticed the intruder carrying a vacuum-type object in his hand, she did convey that information to Detective Mowry later that day, as well as Detective Gooch a few days later after that. What? She saw the intruder carrying a vacuum-type object in his hand. Where did that come from? I think this just goes to show how much information there is out there that we have not learned about and that we are going to be shocked about when it comes to the time of the trial. Another part of that Section B having to do with the eyewitness reports states, at approximately 4:17 a.m., a camera at 1112 King Road picked up audio of what sounded like a struggle coming from off camera. The security camera is less than 50 feet from Kernodle's bedroom wall. The struggle lasted less than 1 minute, and unintelligible sounds can be heard on the camera. So, oh my gosh, guys, that is vastly different from what we learned about in the PCA or the Exhibit A that was called the PCA, because we don't know if we ever even saw the PCA, where the sounds that camera 50 feet from Xana's room heard were more like this. In the Exhibit A or PCA, this is how those sounds were described. It says, at 4:17 a.m., a security camera located at 1112 King Road, a residence immediately to the northwest of 1122 King Road, picked up a distorted audio of what sounded like a whimper, followed by a thud. A dog can also be heard barking numerous times around 4:17 a.m. It notes that camera is about 50 feet from Xana Kernodle's bedroom wall. And in Judge Hippler's order, that description of a struggle being heard from the camera next door is mentioned not once, not twice, but 3 different times. So in the Exhibit A or the PCA, the sounds were described as a whisper and a thud. But in Judge Hippler's order on the Frank's hearing motion, a struggle was described. And to me, that's vastly different, right? What do you guys think? Now, we'd also learned some information about Kaylee's dog Murphy through the motion for a Frank's hearing itself on January 23rd and 24th through Ann Taylor's oral argument. Now, remember, a lot of that hearing ended up being not open to the public. So, some of what was discussed in court, not open court, I was going to say open court, but it wasn't open court, was not information that we heard, and a little more was again added here for us to learn about through Judge Hippler's order on the Frank's hearing motion. So in section E of the order on the defendant's motion for a Frank's hearing, it's all about the dog barking, and it says, in this issue, defendant challenges omissions pertaining to barking dog referenced in Payne's Exhibit A. It states that at 4:17 a.m., a security camera located in a nearby residence on King Road picked up distorted audio of what sounded like voices or a whimper followed by a loud thud. A dog can also be heard barking numerous times starting at 4:17 a.m. The only other information in the Payne Exhibit A pertaining to the dog refers to the fact that Kaylee Gonzalez's dog Murphy was found in her bedroom by first responders. Defendant contends that Detective Payne failed to include 3 allegedly important pieces of information pertaining to the dog. 1, that the dog heard on the security camera continued to bark for 30 minutes after the intruder left. 2, that Detective Payne conducted a test to determine that it was likely that the dog was outside while barking for those 30 minutes, presumably. And number 3, that Murphy was found without any blood on him, even though the bedroom doors were open where the decedents were found. According to the defendant, this admitted information would have revealed that whoever was in the house brought the dog back inside after the suspect left. He further argues this information is material and exculpatory because it undermines the narrative and the timeline and supports probable cause. So what we learned there was that Murphy was apparently, in fact, found in Kaylee's bedroom, that he did not have any blood on him, and apparently when his bark was picked up by that neighboring security camera for 30 minutes, he was outside while he was barking. So what does that all mean anyway? It's information we did not know before this hearing for a Frank's hearing and then the subsequent order on the motion for a Frank's hearing.